in the outer rim of Sector 13 where the galactic coordinates loop back on themselves. Due to distortions in space, time hovered a ship older than most stars. It was built by the Eldaria, a race whose existence predated the written language of most known species. Their vessels did not hum or burn fuel. They drifted like whispers between the atoms of space, barely registering on any known scale of measurement. This ship, the Vigilance, had reached the final entry on the Assembly's uncharted priority worlds list. It had taken them 400 years to scan, study, and document every planet on the chart, except one, Earth. And now, Earth sat directly ahead, suspended in the void like a blue and white marble, turning slowly on its axis. Commander Relic. The vessel's overseer stood at the observation panel, arms folded behind his back. His species didn't breathe air, didn't age in the traditional sense, and had no use for names until adulthood, by which point most civilizations they encountered were already extinct or assimilated. But Earth had remained a phantom. Relic reviewed the ship's scanning results again. No energy anomalies, no orbital defenses, no sign of hyperdrive signatures. Primitive satellites spun lazily in low orbit, transmitting endless loops of sound and data, some mathematical, some musical, others incomprehensibly chaotic. Nothing, he said aloud, though no one needed to hear it. The crew was linked neurally, yet despite the lack of immediate threat, the Vigilance would go no further. The Eldri's prime directive deafed it into their consciousness since birth was absolute. Under no condition shall you breach the orbital boundary of Earth. There was no elaboration, no footnote, no reason. Even Relic, whose intellect had modeled civilizations from a single DNA strand, could not decrypt the origins of the directive. Every attempt to trace it through Eldari archives led only to blacked-out files, recursive security locks, and ancient metadata written in code no longer used. Somewhere in the silence of those empty files was a warning that spanned millennia. A junior systems analyst, Aaron, dared to speak, his voice unusually organic for an Eldari commander. The atmospheric readings indicate breathable conditions. Radiation levels are stable. Biological activity appears dense, but manageable. Relic didn't respond at first. He stared at the planet. Earth was alive. That much was clear. The surface pulsed with electromagnetic noise, radio, microwave, laser, optical pulses. Not organized for communication, more like static, filtered through emotion. It felt angry, curious, loud, and yet no human had ever answered a single galactic hail. Why? Relic murmured. Why does a species so young, so unevolved, command such reverence from our kind? He remembered an incident from 300 cycles ago. A rogue survey ship, captained by a dissenter, had entered Earth's orbit without permission. It was never heard from again. No wreckage, no distress signal, just silence. The ship vanished. And within 50 Earth years, the planet's technological growth had accelerated sixfold. Coincidence or consequence? Relic turned to his communication. Officer, send nothing. He ordered. The others paused. Commander. He clasped his hands behind his back. Let them think we've never arrived. Let them believe we still fear them, because the truth was, they did. Asterisk across the galaxy, nestled within the rings of a cold gas giant, sat the archive core of the Galactic Assembly, a structure so vast it eclipsed the planetary rings it hovered over. The archive was not just a library. It was a sentient repository. It remembered everything. Every first contact, every war, every extinction, every whisper. But when it came to Earth, the archive had almost nothing. The planet was indexed under a generic designation, Sol 3, known to be carbon-based, oxygen-rich, and biologically vibrant. But unlike other cataloged worlds, Sol 3 had no cultural breakdown, no linguistics files, no sociogenetic mapping. All access attempts triggered the same red symbol, restricted, by Council Order 001. And the strangest part? No one alive even remembered issuing that order. Archivist Lorana, data analyst for the young. Valari species had only been in the assembly for 26 standard cycles, still considered a novice. She specialized in tracing cultural evolution across pre-FTL species, particularly those with creative anomalies, artwork made before written language, sudden jumps in mathematics without formal logic structures. Her curiosity had always been seen as harmless until she asked the archive a simple question. Show me the last direct encounter with Earth. The screen flickered. A pulse of static buzzed through the air like an ancient breath being held. Then the red glyph appeared. Restricted by Council Order 001. Loran frowned. Council Order 001 was theoretical, a myth whispered in training facilities. It was believed to predate even the Eldary's entry into the Assemblia. It failed safe to prevent certain knowledge from spreading across civilizations. But what knowledge could Earth possibly hold that warranted the first restriction in the entire galaxy's databank? Unsettled, Loran broke protocol. She accessed the temporal drift logs, an unstable archive of lost data packets often corrupted, distorted by FTL echoes, or scattered during black hole migrations. Most archivists avoided them. Loran dove in head first. Within hours, she found fragments, not files, not reports. Quotes. Isolated phrases, most anonymous, most with metadata scrubbed. Do not land. They are watching the watchers. Human creativity is not innovation. It's adaptation under fire. We gave them language by accident. They gave us fear in return. And one quote, isolated in a sealed quantum file labeled Eldary Origin Code. Human potential is not to be disturbed. That last phrase wasn't a warning. It was a decision. Not that Earth was dangerous, but that it was to be left untouched, unshaped. And UNEF, LUENCED. Like watching a storm build on the horizon and choosing not to interfere, Loran reported her findings to her supervisor, who promptly erased her access credentials and submitted a formal notice to the council stating, Analyst. Loran has accessed materials not meant for active species. But the archive remembered. The archive always remembered, and within its encrypted subconscious deep. In its unlit vaults, it began replaying a sequence it hadn't triggered in millennia, the Earth Protocol. Meanwhile, orbiting the archive in a cloaked observer pod, two Eldari researchers stared in silent horror as the forbidden sequence reactivated. One turned to the other. Someone opened the gate. The other only whispered back, Then Earth will remember us soon. Asterisk long before the archive had protocols. Long before the Eldari commanded fleets like drifting cities, before the Assembly even knew what humans called the Milky Way, the galaxy had already marked Earth as something different. But no one remembered why. No one, except perhaps those ancient surveillance fragments buried in obsolete corners of abandoned outposts. It began in silence, not Earth's silence, theirs. The first ship that approached Earth wasn't one of conquest or diplomacy. It was observational. Non-interference protocols were strictly followed. It hovered behind the moon, cloaked in quantum scatter. Monitoring early human civilization around the time they were chiseling gods into stone and burning myths into clay tablets. The crew expected to witness another slowly growing species, primitive, tribal, fragile. What they saw instead disturbed them deeply. It wasn't the violence. Most pre-FTL civilizations indulged in violence. It was almost a universal trait, one they tracked, studied, and sometimes used to gauge how likely a species was to survive. Its own evolution. But Earth's violence wasn't impulsive. It was strategic, engineered, adaptive. When early human tribes warred, they learned. When they were wiped out, others mimicked what worked and improved it. One region developed iron tools before another even finished with bronze. One warlord used siege tactics before the word architecture had a phonetic symbol. What concerned the observers wasn't humanity's brutality, it was their ability to evolve through pain. One crew member of that long-lost Eldari vessel designation, unknown, broke the first rule of observation. They made contact, not directly. They left a fragment of technology, a simple gravimetric modulator buried beneath the sands near an emerging settlement humans would later call Nineveh. The humans didn't worship it. They didn't fear it. They dismantled it. With stone tools, with no understanding of antimatter, no neural interface. They took it apart piece by piece, and within 50 Earth years, myths in that region started depicting gods who floated above the ground, commanded invisible force, and burned stars without fire. That's when the changes began. Within 2 Earth centuries, humans who had no access to global communication developed similar technologies, symbols, and strategies independently. Across continents, stories emerged of beings that descended from the sky, were ripped apart, and whose tools became the hands of men. This was no coincidence. The Assembly later theorized that humans did not inherit technology, they absorbed it through observation. It's not copying, but reverse. Abstraction. They see patterns, one report noted, where there are none, and somehow they make them real. Then came the first disappearance. The original Eldari vessel that made contact sent one last message. They took the signal.
Oh.
It's inside them now. No distress beacon, no visuals, just static. No wreckage was ever found. Just one seismic anomaly on Earth's moon, now believed to be from a forced re-entry or an attempted launch gone wrong. Following the disappearance, Earth's progression accelerated unnaturally. Within a millennium, humans transitioned from stone carvings to mathematics, astronomy, written law, advanced metallurgy, all within a compressed evolutionary window unseen in any known species. Some Assembly members dismissed it as a statistical outlier. Others called it a threat. The archive buried the records. The Council issued Order 001, no further contact. No scans within atmosphere. No surface landings. No broadcasts to the Sol system. Earth would be placed in a state of exclusionary monitoring. They would be observed, but never engaged again. But the damage had already been done. Earth had seen them, and even worse. Earth remembered. Asterisk, the ship appeared without announcement. Unlike the earlier observation craft that had watched from behind. Moons and gas giants, this one entered Earth's orbit with caution but without stealth. Its mission had been authorized by a temporary override of Council Order 101, a motion passed in secret. Without public record. Pushed through by a faction of the Eldari who believed that the silence surrounding Earth had gone on too long. Officially, it was called a diplomatic expedition. Unofficially, it was a test. The ship was equipped with the latest defensive protocols, layered shielding, a full complement of AI diplomats, and memory-locked containment fields. Nothing was to be left behind. Nothing was to interfere with the planet. The crew was instructed to make contact, observe response, and then retreat. No landing was required. A simple broadcast in over 100 languages, including nonverbal, quantum pulses, would be sent directly into the atmosphere. A greeting, a gesture of peace, the message was never acknowledged in the minutes following its transmission. The ship detected something strange, a silent fluctuation in the upper thermosphere brief, like a sigh passing through static. Then, silence again. All systems read green. Earth rotated below them like an indifferent deity, until the lights inside the vessel began to dim. Not simultaneously. Not as an outage. First, the auxiliary systems flickered. Then, internal sensors went blind. One by one, subsystems began to fail, not catastrophically, but as if surrendering to an unseen override. The crew initiated emergency protocols. AI redundancies were activated. Firewalls engaged. But every line of code began returning the same result. Command unavailable. Core access denied. They weren't being attacked. They were being ignored, and that terrified them. More than any weapon, the lead diplomat, a synthetic construct grown from Eldari memory cells, attempted a direct override from the command interface. The screen, instead of responding, flickered with static before displaying a single sentence in ancient assembly script. One not used in tens of thousands of cycles. You have already given us everything we need. No coordinates followed, no threat. Just that one sentence. Moments later, the ship vanished. There was no detonation. No explosion detected from orbiting probes. no heat bloom. The vessel didn't crash or flee. One instant, it was there transmitting. The next, it was gone. It's gone from space, from memory, from the archive. It was as if Earth had simply erased it. The response from the Council was immediate and brutal. Council Order 001 was reinstated with permanent classification status. No species, regardless of rank or age, was to approach or interact with Earth. No scans. No exceptions. The official story later leaked to a few Assembly members. Blamed the loss on a rare gravitational anomaly near Earth's orbit, a fold in local space-time, a convenient lie. But those who knew better said nothing. Over the next 50 Earth years, an odd pattern emerged. Humanity, still limited by chemical rockets and electromagnetic communication, began accelerating again. Their computing capabilities exploded. Their understanding of quantum fields began to flirt with concepts even the Eldari hadn't fully unraveled. A handful of researchers across the planet began to write equations that should not have existed. Not yet. No one could explain it. But those who had witnessed the disappearance knew what had changed. Earth hadn't just seen them. Earth had learned from them. Whatever had been aboard that ship, its code, signal patterns, its languages, even its presence, had become something Earth could digest, adapt to, absorb. The ship hadn't been destroyed, it had been understood, and that, in the eyes of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilization, was the most terrifying outcome of all. Asterisk, the galaxy was vast, but its rules were few. Life emerged. Life evolved. Civilizations rose, stumbled, or thrived, often measured by how well they obeyed the rhythms of physics, time, and entropy. Even among the advanced, evolution was a steady crawl, incremental, predictable, understandable, until Earth. What unnerved the Eldari most was not that humans had developed fast, but that their development broke the curve. Humanity didn't rise like other species. It leapt. Its greatest advancements followed catastrophes. Its most profound ideas emerged from chaos. And its collective intelligence thrived not in harmony, but in opposition. They had no telepathic link, no genetic memory, no central cultural data flow. And yet they connected. The chaos of 8 billion minds screaming at once had somehow created a form of progress more potent than galactic consensus. Where most civilizations required thousands of years to reach orbital mechanics, humans did it in a blink of astronomical time. The Assembly's analysts had once joked, long ago, that if you took away Earth's resources, destroyed their governments, and erased their histories, humans would still build a radio tower within 50 years. Just to scream into the void, that was no longer a joke. Deep in a neglected sector of the Assembly archive, an autonomous network of data sentinels had flagged a pattern. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a message. It was a frequency, an unbroken pulse, beaming outward from Earth's surface, so faint it blended with background radiation. It wasn't encoded. It wasn't directed at any one species. It was simply ... waiting. At first, it was dismissed as atmospheric noise. Earth had millions of satellites, most outdated, most haphazardly maintained. But this signal was different. It didn't decay, didn't distort. And more importantly, it changed when someone was listening. One probe, stationed 3 systems over, turned its array toward Earth during a routine calibration. As it locked into Earth's signal band, the frequency shifted by a few hertz. Not enough for a message, not enough for a code. Just enough to let the probe know it had been noticed. The probe self-destructed 2 hours later, citing logic loop. Overload of failure. It's typically only triggered when a system is confronted with an unsolvable paradox. Assembly technicians tried to replicate the incident. They couldn't. They sent another probe. This time it lasted for hours. The signal didn't attack. It didn't infiltrate. It simply responded. Not with information, not with intention. With awareness. That was when the phrase first surfaced within internal reports. Earth is listening. became a cautionary whisper among diplomats and xenolinguists. Don't transmit. Don't scan. Don't even think too loudly when near. Sol 3, Earth, had become a ghost at the edge of interstellar thought, a living silence that pressed its presence without saying a word. The galaxy had long believed intelligence followed a path: first survival, then communication, then expansion. But Earth didn't follow that. It didn't broadcast its arrival. It didn't seek new territory. It didn't build generation ships to explore the stars. It sat, still watching, building, learning. No one could understand the restraint. The Eldari, in their earliest age, had once said, "To possess power and not use it is divine." But humans didn't act like gods. They didn't offer wisdom. They didn't threaten. They didn't bargain. They remained quiet. And in that quiet, the oldest races began to fear a truth they could not speak aloud. Maybe humanity was not silent because it had nothing to say. Maybe it was silent because it already knew how the story ends. For the first time in over 10,000 cycles, the assembly hall was filled with uncertainty, not the procedural kind bred from political deadlock or diplomatic etiquette, but real existential doubt. The chamber itself was a monument to peace. In rational order, it was not a room, but an artificial moon hollowed from obsidian, orbiting a white dwarf known as Alisar, chosen for its absolute neutrality and isolation. Inside, the council gathered bioforms, synthetics, consciousness fields.
Even vaporous entities suspended in magnetic chambers.
74 species, some billions of years old, all of them unified by a single question that had remained unspoken. For too long, what is Earth becoming? They didn't speak of the planet directly in official transmissions. Instead, they used coded designations, objects. The quiet world. It wasn't censorship. It was superstition wrapped in protocol. Saying the name was starting to feel like invoking something unknowable. And yet now, they had no choice. The Valari delegation, newly ascended to primary voice rank, submitted a motion. Simple. Direct. Lift Council Order 001. Let us make peaceful contact with the humans. The hall trembled not physically, but through the shared neural network many species use to process emotion. Ripples of resistance spread instantly, even from the normally passive observers like the ankle, who communicated only in scent and had never opposed a single motion in their recorded history. Contact now? Hadn't they seen the signs? Every decade that passed, Earth advanced in ways that defied prediction models. It's artificial intelligence that evolved in chaos, yet stabilized. Its own networks without a central node. Language systems that didn't just translate but anticipated the speaker's intent. Quantum research that ignored proven theories and still yielded successful results, and through it all no messages. No ambassadors, no ships, just Earth, watching, always watching. Some delegates tried to argue that humans were a danger only if provoked, that their silence was a wall built from fear, not confidence. But others, especially the long-lived Eldari, knew better. They had seen enough. In one of the assembly's intercessions, a rarely heard voice spoke. A being named Malin, one of the few surviving original Eldari counselors, floated forward, his form like a cascade of translucent crystal. "We once believed that time made a species wise," Malin said. His voice projected as harmonic tones interpreted by every mind in their own language. But humanity did not wait for time. They used conflict. They used loss. They fed on pressure, and they grew. No one interrupted. Not even the Clethrix, who had once devoured 2 civilizations before being rehabilitated. Malin continued. They do not expand because they do not need to. They do not speak because they have already listened. Earth is not silent because it is primitive. Earth is silent because it is finished listening. The chamber sat in stillness. A counter-motion was raised not to contact Earth, but to seal all outer probes, destroy observation satellites, and erase Earth from active catalogs. Bury it. Forget it. Let the blue world drift in its orbit unknown and undisturbed. But such a motion required a majority, and that's when the fracture began. Several mid-tier civilizations refused. They had grown curious. They They wanted to know what Earth had become. Some even saw the silence not as a threat, but as an invitation. Perhaps humanity is waiting for a worthy conversation, one argued. Perhaps their silence is a mercy. The chamber divided. One faction lobbied for permanent avoidance. The others, smaller, more daring, demanded revelation, contact, even if it meant risk. Old alliances splintered. Dated bases were restricted. A dozen species quietly began building stealth-class crafts, intended not for war, but for observation. So fine that even Earth wouldn't notice. But everyone in that chamber, regardless of allegiance, knew one truth. The moment Earth chose to speak, the balance of the galaxy would shift, because humanity was not unknown anymore. They were unanswered. And in a universe built on diplomacy, trade, and war, nothing was more terrifying than a question left hanging in the dark. In the vacuum between stars, there is no sound, no wind, no voice, no scream. And yet, the moment Earth replied, the entire galaxy felt it. It did not come as a signal burst or a diplomatic frequency. There were no coordinates, no encryption, no effort to establish protocols. The message came as a wave not transmitted, but emitted from every surface of Earth. It rippled through space like a whisper not spoken aloud, a pulse that bypassed sensors, shielding, even the limitations of translation matrices. It was comprehended, not decoded. The Eldari felt it first. Their observers, positioned light hours beyond Pluto's dark frontier, detected the shift before any instruments did. One moment. Earth's electromagnetic signature was erratic, and human as chaotic and noisy as it had been for centuries. Next, it was precise, deliberate. Every satellite, every low-frequency burst, every quantum ping dash aligned, as if Earth had stopped speaking its nonsense and begun speaking in a language no one had ever taught it. The message was short and terrifyingly clear. We're not ready to leave. You're not ready for us to arrive. Across the assembly, translation protocols failed to misinterpret it. No matter the language, the syntax, the species, it meant the same thing. Humanity had not expanded because it chose not to. Humanity had not spoken because it already understood, and humanity, in its maddening quiet, had been watching the stars, evaluating them. At first, disbelief spread faster than the message. Dozens of member species questioned its authenticity. Some claimed it was a prank possibly engineered by dissenters within the assembly. Others insisted Earth had finally tapped into higher communication networks by accident. But the message didn't end. It looped quietly, calmly, from satellites, from deep-sea cables, from atmospheric balloons, long thought abandoned, from places no one had known were transmitting. The message was not a threat, but a confirmation of what the Eldari had feared since the first failed contact Earth had made. Its decision. They were staying put, but they were fully aware of the galaxy that surrounded them. The psychological impact was immediate. Some younger species initiated internal lockdowns, reclassified Earth as a forbidden anomaly. Others, obsessed with understanding the human threshold, launched covert observation missions, every one of which vanished within Earth's gravitational perimeter, never to be seen again. And yet, Earth never responded again, not even to the intrusions, not even to the fear. The message had been sent, and that was enough. The Great Fracture, as it came to be known, split the assembly into three factions. The first, the concealers, believed Earth should be hidden from future civilizations, quarantined in legend and erased from star maps. Silence, they believed, was a warning no one should dare challenge. The second, the Seekers, believed Earth was the answer to galactic stagnation, that humanity held the next evolutionary threshold, and that silence wasn't defiance, it was patience, a test of worth. And the third, the Witnesses, neither feared nor worshipped Earth. They merely observed, waiting for the next pulse, the next message, the next moment of awakening. They're still waiting, in a dark corner of the archive. Deep beneath firewalls layered with forgotten languages, there's now a single entry marked under Earth's designation, Sol-3. Status: aware contact response. Deferred directive: do not engage on beneath it. One final note: it isn't written in assembly code. It isn't encrypted. It's in English. You've looked long enough. We're looking back now. Thus ended the silence. Not with fire, not with conquest, but with the realization that Earth, as the quiet world, had become the galaxy's mirror, and the rest of the stars were not sure they liked what they saw.